When I told my mom when I was in high school, oh my God, I'm so depressed.
What'd she say?
Looked at me, she's like, what the hell are you depressed? What are you talking about? Depressed.
She said, you got a house?
Depression and mental health. I mean, people might hate me for saying that, but it's a rich person's disease.
So America's imagination of Asian women has been shaped so much by violence and by a need to cater to America's military.
It was even portrayed in movies, like, me so horny. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the show. We back again. I am Jeff Kung. This is
Jason Chu.
That's right. Another podcast with an Asian slant. I'll let my guest first introduce himself real quick.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? Jason Chu. I've been a rapper. I'm a content creator. Just here to talk my shit, bro.
Yeah, there you go. I'm Jeff Kung, also a rapper, singer. Lived in China for 20 years as him. And figuring out ways that we can empower the Asian community. One person at a time. So let's just get into the show real quick. A lot of Asian topics to talk about. I want to talk about the White Lotus show first.
Ooh, it went super viral.
It went
recently.
Super viral because our clips went super viral last week.
Similar topic
about, we talked about the fetishization of Asian men. Mm-hmm. We also talked about people who don't date within their race.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because right after those clips went viral, I saw the White Lotus season 3 clip go viral.
Set in Thailand
as it pertains to, I forgot which Blackpink character.
Lisa.
Was it Lisa?
In the show. Yeah.
Lisa was in the show.
Yeah.
And there was a Sam Rockwell monologue about him having an Asian fetish and going to Thailand to, let's say, make his dreams come true. Mm-hmm. And at first it was quite difficult to listen to.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, because it was a bit triggering to me because it really, when we put out those clips, there were people who said in the comments, there's a difference between fetishization and preference.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Which I completely agree with. And I understand that argument. But this was one of those moments where it was complete fetishization and objectification. And in that clip, he talked about having sex with over 1,000
Asian girls.
And that's what he dreamed of. And that's what it kind of, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I'll let you go first.
Yeah.
What did you feel after just seeing that clip?
Yeah, so we just rewatched the White Lotus season 3 clip.
Yeah.
What stuck out to me about this clip is that he has no idea what an Asian woman is.
Yeah.
He only knows his fantasy of them.
Yeah.
Right? So Sam Rockwell's character, he's saying, I realized I wanted to be an Asian girl. No, you don't. You have no clue. These women have no humanity to him.
Yeah.
All they exist as is his sexual imagination and projection of who they are. Yeah. And that's what fetishization is, right? Yeah. Fetishization is imagining something about someone and then wanting them, not because of who they are, but because of what fantasy of yours they fulfill.
Yeah.
And that's what really sticks out to me about a lot of people. Like, to me, what separates preference or interest from fetishization is that one is you know some people, right? You know something about who they might be, where they come from, what they've gone through. But fetishization, you don't actually know anything about them. You just know what you project onto them.
Right.
They're this or they're that. And that's what fascinated me in this White Lotus clip is when Sam Rockwell's character said, I realized I wanted to be an Asian girl.
Yeah.
He has no idea what it means to be an Asian woman. It was all in his fantasy.
Yeah.
What he wanted to be, what he wanted to use people for. Yeah. It was all his own perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I saw it, like, I had a lot of thoughts run through my head, but one of them was because I had spent a lot of time in Thailand because of my coconut water business, Real Cocoa. I've just been going there on and off for the past, let's say 10, 20 years. Right? And I know a lot of white people there.
Yeah.
Right. And I can't just say it's all one type of white guy who goes
to
Thailand, right? Now, of course, there are the passport bros, right, who maybe are sick of the Western concept of the masculine and feminine, or let's say the lack thereof in the Western world.
Yeah.
They feel like the feminine in Asia, but not just Asia, in Europe,
Africa, Latin America.
Yeah. The masculine, feminine roles there are different. And they feel like, okay, maybe going to a foreign country like Thailand or like anywhere else, actually, China, Taiwan, anywhere, could make them feel more like a masculine, whereas, because, the traditional roles are quite different there, right? The cooking, the cleaning, the taking care of, or even in Muslim countries, right? Like they teach that. Yeah. So you have those clearly defined roles that some men are more comfortable in, which I totally get. Then you have, similar to what Sam Rockwell was saying, the people who just go on their sex debauchery kind of trips, right? And then you see them walking around in all the weird shady bars, with a new girl every night, and kind of similar to what you were saying, they don't know about their culture, they're just kind of objectifying it. And beyond that, maybe not just objectifying, but harks back to Vietnam and prostitution and, the dominance type of, that dynamic where people look down upon, or I don't even call it slavery, but something that alludes to that.
Yeah, well, yeah, because there's a for my nonprofit, Hate is a Virus. We actually just put out a post on our socials talking about, right? So it was just March 16th, which is the anniversary of the Atlanta spa shootings. Yeah. And this dude walked in, shot, killed 8 people, 6 of whom were Asian American women working at massage parlors. Yeah. And he said, oh, it's because they were a temptation and I had to get rid of this temptation and blah, blah, blah. And that mentality around Asian women has been shaped by American history, by American policy, because you realize, right, in 1874, the Page Act outlawed Chinese women from coming to America. And it did it because it said they would be an immoral influence. And it was actually literally saying Chinese women were all sex workers. Right. Or any Chinese woman that would come to America would be a prostitute. Yeah. And then the next time that Americans encountered a lot of Asian women was in America's wars, was in World War II, was in the Korean War, was in the Vietnam War, was in the Filipino-American War. Yeah. And what happened was you had a ton of young American men going overseas, and the sex industry flourished around American military camps. Yeah. And so all of these guys came back from war, and they had this image of Asian women as catering to them sexually, as being available and easily available. And this isn't Asian culture. This is a version of Asian culture that evolved because if you're in a war-torn country and there's these people with money and weapons coming from overseas, of course you're going to cater to them. Yeah. And this culminated in 1945's War Brides Act, where that was actually one of the first pieces of legislation after Chinese exclusion to let Asian people, and very specifically Asian women, into the country. Yeah. And so one of the major movements in the 20th century of Asians coming to America was Asian women that American men, American soldiers went over, had sex with, got into relations with, and brought them back to America with them. So America's imagination of Asian women has been shaped so much by violence and by a need to cater to America's military.
Well, it's messed up, right? Because it was even portrayed in movies like "Me So Horny,"
Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket. When I saw that for the first time, I was like, "What? How can this be actually in a movie right now?" Because that kind of just perpetuates the stereotype that you were just discussing. And, it's this entire Asian fetish thing is such a nuanced discussion because, yes, you have the male dominance part of it, the white dominance, like you said let's say the GIs back in the day. And then you also have, the history of colonialism in Asia by the British.
Opium Wars,
Hong
Kong,
Hong Kong, Malaysia, all these places. So it dates back to that as well. But I can't just say that it's just, all right, white men fetishize, Asian women, because there's also, going back to what I was saying about the passport bros, the more traditional roles of the man and female, I can't discount that. I think sometimes we do also have to look introspectively at certain things where it could be a combination of everything. Yeah. Right? It's not just one issue, right? They may sexualize them, but then also realize that they're more feminine not in the physical form, but maybe they're in the relationship.
I think the thing that's interesting about Asia, right? Like, obviously, we've both lived in Asia. We both lived all around and traveled all around Asia. Yeah. And we both know, like, Asia's very modern in a lot of ways, but in other ways, Asia's held onto traditional culture. Yeah. And this is something that's interesting about America. We're a very young country. Yeah. And America's really bad at holding on to traditions. And I don't mean, like Plymouth Rock and say Christmas, not happy holidays. Like, I mean, like traditions that actually build communities. Yeah. Traditions of, in China, right? There's this idea of guanxi, which means relationship. Yeah. And you're expected to understand the relationships you have and whether you've been a drain on them or whether you've been providing for them. Right. And what, in the West, people sometimes look at it as like, oh, what do you owe people?
Right.
But in
Gold
China,
digging or something like that.
Exactly. But in China, it's so much more complicated. Yeah. And I think that some of that desire, some of what we're seeing for these guys who are like, dude, I'm fed up. A lot of dudes, God bless them all, they take their frustrations with society and they put it on women. Right? They say, oh, I'm not being respected enough. Right. And it's women's fault. Right. And it's like, dude, it's just part of society. America doesn't respect workers. America doesn't respect the middle class. America doesn't respect the disabled. Right. And they go and they externalize it and they say, man, by marrying or getting a relationship with or having sex with these women, I'm gonna fill what's lacking in me. And it's like, dude, it's so much bigger than the person you're with or the person you're having sex with. It's about this whole culture that you were born and bred in. And I really think that a lot of what people are looking for when they have these fetishes or when they have these whatever, there's something deeply broken in the culture and community they're in. And instead of trying to unpack that and solve it and fix it, they look elsewhere to save them from it.
There's a lot of stories that I know of guys, like you said, they felt either disrespected here or, similar to what we were discussing in the clips last week about feeling invisible here. Yeah. Right? Yeah. As Asian men, but white men being felt invisible from their own spouses, whether that be whatever race. Yeah. And then when they go to Thailand, especially if they're older men, a lot of, 67-year-olds, they just feel like America's forgotten them. Yeah. And when they go to Thailand, they feel all of a sudden young again. They feel looked at. They feel they get the attention. They get the respect. They get the sexuality back into them. Yeah. And I see a lot of them, this is a lot, go there to objectify and then fall in love. They actually fall in love. So they go and sleep with whatever, how many you can think of prostitutes, and then they find one and they fall in love with her. But they don't understand that the woman that they're falling in love with is not, I don't want to say doesn't love them back, but doesn't use the same Western idea of love and back to him. And then they get played or, and they get heartbroken and they get even more jaded.
Generalizing it to the whole culture.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
All women here.
Yeah, correct. All women here just want my money. Or they're okay with it. They're like, okay, I get it. It's a fair trade. They treat me good. Yeah. They may not write love letters to me. Yeah. Or, like a lot of them fall in love and at times they get heartbroken because the Thai women don't exhibit the same type of Western love back to them. Yeah. And then they become jaded. And then they expect everyone to be the same way. Yeah. So I see a lot of that. And I see a lot of my foreigner friends there get really pissed off when movies like this come out, who have married Thai people, they speak Thai, you know, they are respectful of the culture.
Yeah.
They dated every type of woman, every race before, and they just happened to fall in love with one.
Because they know that this is now going to slot them into that niche.
Correct.
And there's absolutely this stereotype of the Westerner who goes to Thailand and they're there to do bad. They're there to do stuff they're not allowed or couldn't do at home.
Yeah. So you have both. Yeah, it's kind of just every side gets pitted in a certain stereotype. I want to be careful about putting everyone in one box.
Definitely.
You know, but I think that does happen in movies a lot, right? Which is another thing another thought that I had after watching this clip was that, all right, Asians in Hollywood, here we go again.
And that's crazy to me too, because Lisa is one of the most popular, she might be one of the 10 most recognizable female entertainers, women entertainers in the world. Yeah. And here they have her,
dancing and
being this like side character.
Yeah.
Which, obviously it's her, first debut, Hollywood role. Yeah, sure. That's cool. But I just think it's so interesting that even this woman who is a massive superstar looked up to, she's an ambassador for luxury brands. Yeah. In America, the only role or the first role that's available to her is being slotted in the same stereotype as every other Asian woman has been in Hollywood for, like you're saying, it goes even further back than Full Metal Jacket. We're talking Madame Butterfly. We're talking Miss Saigon. Yeah.
And it's ironic. She's Thai.
She is Thai.
And like the first role of hers is being some like Thai sexy vixen in Hollywood. Yeah. To me, there's just doesn't sit right with me. There's something wrong with it. To me, doesn't sit right with me. It's kind of weird that's, like I said, one of our biggest stars. Yeah. And her first role being some like Thai
it would
vixen.
be like if, I don't know, if Jamie Foxx went to China and his first role was as like a slave laborer brought over by the British, and he's just doing pretty stereotypical things. I think a lot of Black Americans would have a problem with that.
Yeah, of course.
And then to see this woman who's massively successful and adored the world over, not just in Asia. Yeah. It's God bless her and her team. Hope they're making the right moves for her. But
absolutely, I support her all the way.
Yeah, it's telling. It's telling about the culture.
That's really what it is. All right. Let's move on. Let's go to something more of a bright note in Asian pop culture. Yosuke Yukimatsu, the DJ from I think Boiler Room recently. Yeah. That's right. So that Boiler Room set really blew up. And got a shout out from Joe Rogan, and then also Fred again gave him a cosign at the event. And it's just a kind of an inspirational story, and made me think of, a lot of other. First of all, it was an inspirational story, and it made me think, this is fantastic. We got another Asian in the DJ scene.
It's great.
Getting his flowers. Yeah. And people understanding, whoa, okay, there's a whole world of Asian DJs out there. But, I'm remiss to really share with everyone that there's been a long history of really good Asian DJs.
Yeah, there's something about DJing, right? Like there's I think Jeff Chang has a book, Legions of Boom. Yeah. Maybe it's not Jeff Chang, but there's a book, Legions of Boom, about Filipino DJs, hip hop DJs in the Bay Area. Bro. Like we came up on hip hop. Yeah. DJ Neil Armstrong, the Invisible Scratch Pickles, Q-Bert.
One of the best scratch DJs ever. A legend.
Fifth Platoon, DJ Rolly Rowe, even Mixmaster Mike. Yeah, the Beastie Boys had a Filipino DJ.
Yep. And then LA had DJ Rhetmatic. So
that's the homie.
Yeah, there has been a long list of Asian DJs, even in Asia. In Japan, there's been a lot. So this is nothing new.
And this is the funny thing is I think there's something about being a DJ that Asians in hip hop, obviously, in the 90s you had Mountain Brothers and then you had Jin, you've got Dumbfounded. There's rappers. Yeah. But being DJs has like there's a ton. It's a space in hip hop where Asians have managed to find carve out a lane for ourselves for a long time.
Well, I also think, especially as it pertains to like techno, the EDM scene, right? You had Ju, you know, and then I have Yusuke Yukimatsu.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on his name. What's the other guy with long hair?
Aoki. Steve Aoki.
Right, Steve Aoki. You know, so I feel oddly, techno and the EDM scene is more open to other races being DJs because it's not really the face.
Yeah.
You know, they're not the pop singer. It's like more of a, all right, if I can get down on your music and, you know, go to a festival and rock out. And you had Peggy Goo. Even, right. And it's almost easier. Toki Monster. I can keep going. But you know what I mean? I can just keep going with these DJs because it feels more, this is the key word again, meritocratic.
Well, and you know what? I agree.
Yeah.
And I think another thing, I agree. And to add to that, so much of electronic and dance music comes from like queer Black communities.
Yeah.
Right? So much of it is rooted, like raves. Yeah. Raves, when they started, it was like queer communities of color. Yeah. So ironically, right? We hear a lot of talk these days about DEI hires. Yeah. Some of the most genuinely merit-based spaces have been these marginalized spaces where they said, dude, you know, it doesn't matter. We don't care what you look like. We just care that you can get down. Yeah. And you have these cultures, whether that's drag and, you know, ballroom culture, whether that's, you know, hip hop, whether that's EDM, that were grounded in these communities that were used to being passed over because of what they look like. They didn't fit into the system. So they built these spaces where they're like, dude, you're not going to let us fit in. We're going to make a place where everyone can fit in. And so I agree, and I can't help but think that some of the ways that like underground dance music lets anyone in, it doesn't matter, trans, cis, you know, straight, queer, male, women, whatever, like as long as you can get down, right? This is what we learned in hip hop, right? As long as you can show and prove, you got a seat at the table.
All right, let me drop some knowledge on everyone right now. Hip hop, pop music right now, electronic music, would not exist without Asians. Let me tell you why. Dr. Dre, Kanye West, Timbaland,
Afrika Bambaataa.
Every DJ that you know of right now, every producer owes a great ton of gratitude to Japanese engineers.
True.
The Roland, almost every Roland box, MC303, 505, SP1200, the Akai MPC series, MPC 3000, 2000, 1000, any MPC you see out there right now, every drum that you hear right now, the most common drum, the 808, in all genres right now, was created by a Japanese engineer.
That's true.
So the story of the 808 is really interesting because basically Roland told one of their low-level engineers, we need you to make a drum kit, but you get 8 bits. And you get, I think it was something fraction of a second of sample time. And go do it. Lock himself in a room, go do it. He had no idea what he was doing. He'd never heard any electronic music before in his life. But he was just using synthesizers just to basically create what we now know as the 808 kick, the snare, the hat, the tom, everything that you still hear today in almost every genre of music. And then created the 808 as we know today. Akai created the sequencer, essentially, which is what every software now uses to create beats. Ableton, Pro Tools, Studio One, anything, right? And those tools were then embraced by all of the producers out here and used in such creative ways that the Japanese founders never even thought of. When they thought of the MPC 3000, they never thought that Dr. Dre would be using it for a hip hop record.
They had no idea what it would become.
Correct. Or Kanye West or whoever it is. or it would be sampled over and over and over again to make these crazy grimy beats. And I just think that's an amazing testament to the culture of reproducing, because the 808's been resampled so many times.
Yeah, it's the foundation of modern music.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's evolved into something so beautiful where it could become a bass line now, and it could be super dirty, and it could sound like 808 and Heartbreaks, or it could sound something as clean as what it used to sound like. It could be in the 80s pop music and Michael Jackson hits. So, like, just let y'all know, like, this is how creativity happens.
Yeah.
When cultures can merge, but in the most interesting ways,
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. All right.
No, that was fire, dude. I'm gonna steal that and make one on my own channel too. That's huge.
Yeah, it's
my audience will love that.
People don't realize that, All right, so let's moving on. I saw something kind of interesting in a Nextshark, actually, a post about a place in South Korea called Prison Inside Me. And it is a place where people pay, I think like $90 or something, to get locked up in solitary confinement for a day. It's like a hotel, right? But it's a retreat because I feel people there may have, this is probably similar across the world, but the pressures of modern society.
Yeah.
And being overworked, overstimulated. And it's a place where there's no electricity, essentially. I mean, there's lights. You can read a book.
Yeah.
But there's no devices. There's no internet. There's no interaction with anyone. And it's an outlet for these people who, as I said, are like, overstressed.
Yeah.
And it made me think a lot about mental health and how different cultures deal with mental health.
It's so funny because you got people in America paying for like Zen retreats and yoga retreats.
Yeah.
And you've got people in South Korea paying for a prison retreat.
Yeah.
And so it's like everybody's just looking to have a taste of a different culture.
It's funny because my friends also go on, what Vipassana is?
Yeah, of course.
So it's like 10 days where you don't speak, you can't even look at anyone, and essentially you're just meditating the entire day. And that's one outlet of trying to get your mental health back in order. I think a lot of Christians, they like to pray.
Yeah, there's a really great I think a Franciscan monastery up near Sierra Madre, Arcadia.
Yeah.
And you can go, you can spend the day. You don't have to be silent, but it's very quiet and peaceful and reflective.
Yeah.
And I've gone there a couple times. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. And in the West, a lot of people go through therapy or, don't get me wrong. I power to you, but if someone else, the next person that talks to me about their journey or manifesting.
Oh, God.
Or abundance or all. Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. But I get it. Everyone has their way to deal with things.
You find what works.
But it's made me think of a few things about how Asians deal with mental health and how oftentimes in our culture, it's a bit taboo to say if you have any mental health issues.
That's true.
In Chinese, if you say 精神病的话, like 神经病, it means you're crazy.
你心里有事.
Yeah,
right?
It means you're like psychotic.
Yeah.
It's not as clear cut where I'll say it like this. When I told my mom, that when I was in high school, oh my God, I'm so depressed.
Yeah.
What'd she say? Looked at me. She's like, what the hell are you depressed? What are you talking about? Depressed.
She said, you got a house?
Yeah.
You got a bed? Yeah. And I'm cooking you dinner right now.
Exactly.
So
she's like, do you know how the struggle I made to get here? Do you know what I went through as a student? Do you know that we didn't have food growing up? We didn't, X, Y, Z. I heard it for about an hour. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'll never be depressed again, Mom. Thank you.
Or I won't tell you I am. I'll be depressed quietly.
Yeah, exactly. But then I realized, depression and mental health, I mean, people might hate me for saying that, but it's a rich person's disease.
So this is great. So just this morning, actually, I was talking to a friend, Dr. Kevin Nadal. He's a leading Filipino psychiatrist. He's a professor in New York City.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the roots of psychiatry and how like in psychiatry, there's something like 5 core personality traits.
Yeah.
It's all based on one study of 300 white men and their wives in Baltimore.
Okay.
And that's become the norm for psychiatry the world around.
Okay, right.
And they haven't expanded the data sample. People have critiqued it here and there, but fundamentally, and no one's challenged this, the roots of he was saying things like extroversion and introversion.
Yeah.
Being neurotic or not.
Yeah.
The ways those are prescribed and analyzed and diagnosed are still all based on this one thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So what he was sharing with me this morning, we were on Zoom chatting. He was saying, in his eyes, what we need is an expansion of psychiatry, right?
Yeah.
So depression shows up and means one thing for, like, an American kid living in a suburb with 2 parents at home, with decent jobs.
Yeah.
Different things, and because there's one norm, because fundamentally we're still American kids in the suburbs.
Yeah.
It's different if you're, an agricultural worker in rural China. It's different if you're, Filipino living in Manila. It's different if you're Indian and you're living in Mumbai.
Or even a first-generation immigrant here.
Exactly. So his whole thing that we were talking about this morning, he was telling me, psychiatry is a useful tool. The problem is so often what's going on is what's fed into it isn't the right data.
Yeah.
And so the wrong questions are being asked, the wrong factors are being assessed.
Yeah.
And I think that's so interesting because I agree. Depression, the way it's defined right now, you talk to somebody scrapping for survival as a first-generation immigrant, working a restaurant or working a small business.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, I don't have time to be depressed. This is my normal.
Exactly. I want to stay alive, bro.
Yeah. And so what he and his friends, people like Dr. E.J.R. David, another Filipino-American psychiatrist, scholar at the University of Alaska, what they work on is expanding understandings of mental health to not just be like, yo, there's one norm, and that norm is a suburban American middle class, married household.
So what these studies really ignore is Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
True.
And when people don't have their first tier and second tier needs met yet, it's really difficult for them to understand that there is an enlightenment or there's any other type of mental health issues that they have to deal with.
If all a psychiatrist can tell, right? Yeah, somebody who is unhoused.
Yeah.
And they talk to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist says, hey, you need to do some breathing. You need to calm your heart rate. They're like, motherfucker, I need to find housing for tonight so the police don't pick me up.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. If that's all the psychiatrist can say, it really is just for rich people.
But the mindfuck about this is, let me tell you, is that, for example, in America right now, you are already, let's say, in a higher tier need level or development as a society. So all of us are very privy to mental health and depression and everything that we talked about. But the issue is that people are struggling. People still are struggling for housing. They still don't have their first tier and second tier needs met yet. There's people on welfare. There's people, there's living on the streets, etc. But they've already lived in a society where they can feel the effects of mental health.
A few years ago, I read a really good think piece that said America is not a developed nation. There's 2 Americas.
Yeah.
There's one America that's very developed, that has all the resources anybody needs.
Yeah.
And then there's another America that's actually much more akin to a third world or developing nation that your experiences as fellow Americans can vary drastically based on where you live, but especially how much you make.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in the US, it's kind of been the frog in boiling water, where it's kind of been slow. But in China, it's completely, let's say, 5x the speed of the development of the US.
Yeah.
Whereas, you had one generation of parents who had to struggle.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, their next of kin right now are all, I don't want to say living in abundance, but they definitely are living in another tier economically than their parents did. and they are experiencing these mental health issues that their parents didn't. So you have this clear gap, this divide there. And that's why you have the lay flat, the tangping. I don't know if people know about that phenomenon.
Sure.
Right? So basically there is a phenomenon in China that a lot of the youth there have decided to, I don't want to say become complacent, but basically they've experienced too much stress in the workplace and decided to lay flat, 躺平.
It's their version of quiet quitting or bed rotting.
Yes.
They're tapping out.
Yeah. Because
out of the rat race.
They've had too much pressure given to them. There's the work hours are far too long for them because, again, society has shifted into such a higher economic level that was different than their parents. And their parents work 7 days a week, work,
the standard was already
14
high.
hours a day, and expecting that of their children or the next generation just had its mental toll on the youth. Yeah. So that's happening there. And like, I'm very encouraged that psychologists right now are beginning to factor in all of these different data points to adjust how to deal with this mental health crisis.
Yeah, this is what I've learned from friends who are Asian American psychologists. Yeah, actually, my buddies put out a book recently, and they were talking about so first order analysis means you talk about the individual. Yeah. Second order is you talk about the family systems, the relationships around them. Yeah. And then third order thinking, which is what they really were writing about in this book, is when you analyze the society around them. And you need all of them. Yeah. Right? Because an individual might be disordered. Yeah. Or maybe the individual is actually healthy. It's their family that's disordered. Yeah. Or maybe the individual and their family are, reasonably fine, but it's the society that's sick. That's unhealthy. That's causing stress and fear.
That made me think of a lot of first and second generation Asian issues in America. I mean, even Everything Everywhere All at Once touched on this, right? Whereas you have your first generation immigrant parents have a deep cultural divide with their children here. Yeah. And I have a lot of friends who've been to therapy. They try to bring their mom to therapy with them, and it fails miserably. And what you begin to realize is because the mom isn't as receptive because of all of the reasons that we just kind of laid out to mental health. They're either in denial of it, they can't recognize it, it doesn't exist in their psyche, that a lot of times the children have to bear the brunt of it and just deal with it and understand. And to be perfectly honest, it's a long journey, and it happened within my family even, where you kind of have to. I mean, it's tough to be. I even hesitate to say the bigger person. Yeah, but the one to step up, and the one to adjust your own mentality and understand your parents aren't in the same mental health playing field as you are. And it's not that they don't love you, or it's not they don't care about you. Yeah. It's just because they love you in their own way, whether that be providing for you. They may not go to your school play. They may not say, I love you all the time. They may constantly be criticizing you, calling you fat, but they're providing for you. They're giving you an education. Yeah. That's their love language.
Yeah, like I think about this all the time. Like this goes back to what's normal. Yeah. Right? Because for a lot of white families, right? Saying I love you, hugging, that's normal.
And you see that in school too, all your friends.
But when that kid turns 18, there's white parents that ask them to start paying rent at home.
I think that's shocking. Or you get the hell out, you're done. Yeah.
And no Asian parent would ever do that. Yeah. No Asian parent would ever think of like, okay, son, you just turned 18. Yeah, that's right. Now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to start contributing to the household.
Yeah, exactly.
And the funny thing, right, is like, again, our society has said that this is loving. Yeah. Loving is saying I love you and hugging and kissing. And then when you're 18, get out or start paying rent. Yeah. Versus, Asian societies, Asian cultures, a lot of our cultures, maybe you don't say I love you, maybe you don't hug and kiss, but you will always have a house. You will always have a room. If you have problems, you can always come home, and we will criticize you and say you're fat. Yeah. But we'll also, you will never go homeless. Yeah. As long as we're alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm really interested in hearing what our listeners are going to comment about this because I'm sure y'all have a lot of experiences at home with this subject. All right,
And the tagline is, Asian parents know how to say I love you.
Right.
Just not like how you're used to hearing.
That's right. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, let's get into politics. Here we go.
Favorite.
Here we go. Trump revives the Alien Enemies Act for deportations. More than 200 Venezuelans, allegedly to be in gangs, were deported to, I think it was El Salvador recently.
El Salvador.
Right? Yeah. Bukele. Going to those high prison or high security prisons. Yeah. And look, I feel for our Venezuelans, and I definitely understand. I mean, okay, this deportation thing is a very controversial topic that, you know, we've discussed this on this show before, where, you know, I understand that there's a lot of illegals here that are, I don't want to say a drain to society, but I understand the argument that there are too many illegals that we need to figure something out.
I can understand it. I can understand that concern.
Yeah, concern, sure. Right? And I came up with that idea of putting them to work, right? And building a strong labor force here while giving them a path to citizenship. Yeah. Right? But when I saw this, I'm like, no, this is the wrong way to deal with this situation. Just to blindly deport based on people's tattoos or, you know, without any proof or anything. I just felt it was completely absurd, actually. But
I mean, I think the interesting thing too, Jeff, is we know what the Alien Enemies Act has done throughout history. Yeah. Right? So for the first thing, it's supposed to be done during wartime. Yeah. It was created back in the 1800s. Yeah. Or no, it was created in the late 1700s. Yeah. To say if America is at war with another nation. Yeah. And there are nationals of that foreign citizenship who are here. Then certain things can be done. Yeah. Hey, America's not at war right now. Yeah. America has not declared war on Venezuela. Correct. America, but there's been this loophole of saying, hey, the government there is soft on crime, so because of that, this is kind of a war. And I would say beyond that, we know, you know, it's an Asian American podcast. The last time this was used, 125,000 Japanese, including over 75,000 American citizens, were put into concentration camps. Yeah, and so, you know, these 200 people, I don't know who they all are. I don't know what they've all done, but we know what this leads to. This doesn't end at gang members. This doesn't end at, and we've spoken on deportations before, and a lot of people were in the comments, right, saying, look, we just want to deport the violent ones. Well, what I want to ask them is, how do you know who's the violent ones? Yeah. And do you know the people that are getting caught up in these ICE sweeps? Yeah. Or are you just assuming because certain media outlets brand this a certain way, because certain talking heads say, oh, trust us. Yeah. We're just sending the bad ones back. Right. This historically has not been how it's used.
Well, their argument would be better safe than sorry. Right? Let's just, if we got rid of 100 of them and 20 of them are good and 80 are bad, I'll take that percentage.
And that's right. Like, that works great. And we saw this right after the inauguration. Yeah. We saw this as soon as this administration came into office. The buyer's remorse. Oh. No, I'm thinking about, there were these stories, right? Like, Trump voters, which I do genuinely think people voted for Trump for different reasons.
Yeah.
Not everyone
is a racist.
Yeah. Not everyone is anti-Chinese or anti-black. But, there's a lot of different reasons people voted for Trump. But the problem is a lot of people voted for him because of the one or two issues they cared about. And they didn't realize it would bite them in the ass. So I saw, this dude, he voted for Trump. And he's like, dude, my wife worked for the federal government and she just got fired.
Yeah.
Saw another dude in Florida. He was like, hey, yeah, I'm all about deporting illegals. But dude, my
grandma or someone,
my Latin American wife was on a green card and she was here legally and we married and she was about to get her citizenship and she just got picked up by ICE.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, when somebody tells you who they are, you should believe them.
Yeah.
And he said what he was going to do before he came into office. And now that he's doing a lot of that, a lot of people are realizing, oh, I didn't vote for that Trump. I voted for this Trump.
Yeah. It's, when you humanize it, it's really sad because, I completely agree. It's such a slippery slope that he's doing this within the first, 100 days.
Yeah.
And we have 4 more years.
It's
of
been
this, and if he already invokes it,
it's been 2 months since the inauguration.
And if he invokes that now, and let's say this Supreme Court upholds it, what else could he do using this archaic act? That should be done only in war. Who's to say what happens if he goes to war with China? Whatever, what's going to happen for us?
Yeah,
so it's scary, and I just feel like it's completely out of bounds. But continuing with the whole politics subject, you heard about Chinese students about to get banned? I think the Republicans are pushing a bill in Congress right now.
March 14th.
Yeah.
A Republican, I think in the House, introduced a bill that would ban Chinese students from coming to America.
I think right now there's around 277,000 Chinese students here.
Yeah.
And how much they account for? How many billion? Is it what?
11 billion.
$11 billion of tuition revenue for the schools. And they're doing it in the name of espionage. Like almost 300,000 spies going to school here. It's pretty ridiculous.
It's fear mongering. It's yellow peril, right? It's this idea that any one Chinese, like, bro, we've both lived in China.
Yeah.
The average Chinese kid is as much a member of the Communist Party as the average American kid is a member of
CIA.
Why would and I don't know if people know this. I studied in China in college. I studied abroad. There are actually a ton of American students.
Oh, absolutely.
Flooding in that direction too.
Yeah.
And this just reads to me as fear mongering. We all know this. It's the same as Chinese can't buy property and can't do this and that. It also, putting my tinfoil hat on right now, we know the Trump administration does not like higher education. They're pulling hundreds of millions of dollars of funding from institutions. They're attacking them for teaching history and this and that. I wonder if this is a plot by the administration to defund higher education, to pull $11 billion of tuition out of American universities.
That's interesting. I never thought of that. Let's see. But okay, so my views on this is that let's put that argument aside. If this is actually what they're proposing, it's either because of espionage or even, let's say, educational espionage, meaning they'll come here, learn from the best, go to the best universities and then go back to China and start companies and, or be engineers and go make weapons or something, right? Space race. It won't work because there's also a lot of other good universities around the world who are, with open arms, will accept the best and brightest Chinese internationals with their money, with their hardworking mentality, and embrace them into their universities. I bet you the UK, all of Europe right now is salivating on
getting Chinese talent.
And getting Chinese talent. And, you know, as we've said this before, as Bruce Lee said, be water. And when there are obstacles like this that are arbitrary or, you know, just Chinese people will find a way, and you can't stop progress.
Yeah.
You really can't. You know, you cannot stop people from learning. You cannot stop people from seeking higher education, knowledge, and bringing it back to wherever they want to bring it to. I would say, why would you let them go back? Why don't you make it more welcoming so they want to stay here after college? You know, why would you, you know, make it difficult for them to get a visa after staying here for university, spending 4 years at, yes, the best universities in the world, just to go back?
So, you know, people might not know. I went to Yale.
Yeah.
I was a gifted student in high school. Every year, the USA Biology Olympiad team, the USA Math Olympiad team, the International Science and Engineering Fair, the delegates, the USNs, a lot of them are Chinese American. A lot of them are Indian American. Yeah. Everyone that this idea that like, hey, let's get rid of H-1B visas, let's get rid of Chinese international students, like, you know, Americans, dude, without Chinese and Indian and other immigrant students and children of immigrants, the U.S. actually loses a ton of its talent. Dude, do you know what the Bay Area and the tech ecosystem and the tech founder ecosystem looks like?
Google, Microsoft,
Yahoo,
NVIDIA,
Twitch.
You know, all CEOs, you know, Asian descent.
Yeah.
So,
and so that's the thing. Like, people don't understand how much racism is going to cost America. If we lose all the talent that comes to America to learn here and found here, we're actually going to just drop. You thought DeepSeek versus ChatGPT was bad.
Yeah.
Imagine when you don't have the engineers that are even building ChatGPT.
That you deport them, or you don't let them come here to school for school, and then you have them go to Europe or other places.
Do you think that's how America is going to move forward? In the 21st century?
It's completely stupid and very short-sighted. All right, moving on. Another thing that I saw on Next Shark actually was an Asian TikToker getting hate for making chocolate rice. Kat Liu making a chocolate rice with red miso little recipe on TikTok. Got, I think, over like 3.7 million views or something like that. But in the comments, getting racist death threats regarding
from her own
people, about the blasphemy of making chocolate miso rice. And the ironic thing was, other TikTokers then copied this idea, most likely foreigners. And they were praised for the innovation. And, I got to try this at home. And it spoke to, I'm not sure if hypocrisy is the right word, but it was really more why Asians will, you know, within our own race, you know, are so sensitive to cultural traditions or norms. And when we try to break through those things, why is it that we slander those who are trying to, you know, expand?
Do you know, actually, in her comments, was it Asian Americans, Asian diaspora, or was it like Asians?
I think it was kind of everyone.
Yeah,
I think like, this is kind of everyone. This is ridiculous. Like, my mom never made it like this. So like Asian Americans, and then also Asian diaspora, you know, we're also probably saying the same thing. It's similar to when, at least when I've experienced, Italians, when they see someone do a fusion Italian dish, and they just get so pissed off about it. But, you know, I don't know why though, but when a foreigner does it, all of a sudden it's very, it's kitschy.
I really think Asians need to stop objectifying our own culture. And what I mean by that is I think there's a lot of times when we hold culture up on a pedestal in a way where we say like, this is authentic and anything else is a perversion. Anything else is lesser. And that's not how culture isn't just this thing that existed one day and then forever was like perfect.
Yeah.
Right? Like culture evolves. Dude, freaking the way that sushi is served changed over the last 150 years.
Yeah.
You know, spam musubi was invented 100 years ago. It's a Hawaiian cultural treasure now, or from Hawaii. But people make new things all the time. I love orange chicken. It's delicious.
Yeah.
It's not Chinese, but it's Chinese American.
Yeah, true.
And I think that this is what we've got to start doing is we've got to start embracing innovation that comes from within.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to get gentrified.
Well, I don't see Japanese people coming over here getting pissed off seeing like a bunch of California rolls.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
They might be like, dude, this is super weird. This is not like home.
Yeah.
But they're not like this. They're not sending death threats to the sushi chef at, in Minnesota.
I think they just may be saying, oh, this isn't Japanese food under their breath, or they see it and they're like, okay, this is just California food, right? I mean, even my in-laws who came, I brought them to Panda Inn. They're like, this isn't Chinese food. Right? They're like, even though it's this Chinese American food, like broccoli beef was made because they didn't have, kailan here.
Yep.
So they had to use, xilanhua, which is Western broccoli. They had to use
chop
that.
suey.
And then
chop suey was made in America. Egg foo young was made. It's kind of delicious though.
Yeah,
I enjoy it.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with this, but it reminded me of the whole Simulu thing that we talked about, though.
Yeah.
The whole boba cultural appropriation thing.
Yeah.
And I would never say this either, but foreigners making chocolate rice, to me, is not cultural appropriation.
You're doing you're trying.
Yeah.
You're putting up shots.
Yeah.
They won't all go in, but you're trying.
So I just want to make it clear, we don't think that anyone doing any type of Asian food or anything Asian in cuisine or anything in that matter is cultural appropriation. I actually encourage it. I feel like we definitely should give this Kat Liu girl a shout out. She's got a book coming out, 108 Asian cookies. Let me get that right.
Awesome.
And it's actually #1 on the pre-sale list on Amazon.
Let's go. Let's run that up.
So F the haters, Kat Liu, next time, let me try some of your chocolate rice.
And the thing is, I think the thing that's dangerous with this mentality is that this honestly leaves the door open to letting somebody else come in and steal that shit.
Right.
Right? Because, dude, if I've had this thought for a while about gentrification and displacement, about how, dude, a lot of young Chinese kids who grew up in Chinatown, a lot of Filipino kids who grew up in Little Manila, they see it and they're like, dude, I just want to get away from this. I want to get into America. I want to get out of my little small community. I want to go do something different that's cool.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, 15 years down the line, you go back home and it's a club there. It's a trendy coffee shop. What happened? What happened was that other people saw your culture, saw your community, and were like, dude, this place is cool. And while we were out there rejecting it and feeling held back by it, other people came in and they saw what was so dope about our families and our cultures. And they said, we want a piece of that.
Yeah.
So I really think what we need to do is we need to be open. It's what I call pre-gentrification. What I mean by that is instead of letting someone else come in and discover how cool it is and then profit from it or build their business there, we need to love. There's trauma there. There's a lot involved with where we come up from.
Of course.
But we need to understand that there's like real cultural treasure in these spaces and in these traditions. And, sure, innovate on it, do something different, but we got to let our own come in and find the beauty in it. Because if we don't, someone else is.
Let me tell you, I was in Chinatown in LA. This is really more closer to home for us. But I went to a Guy Gerber DJ set there inside, where the Hot Louie is, like that square,
of course.
basically.
Yep.
And
General Lee's?
Yes.
Yeah.
It popped off. And it was just foreigners there. They were doing a whole DJ set using that as a really cool backdrop.
Yep.
And, and then I saw a complex, I think it was, what was a food thing? Do you know what I'm talking about? Smorgasbord or...
Oh, the Smorgasburg, the food festival.
Yeah, the food festival.
Yeah,
is it called Smorgasburg? Let's look that up.
Yeah,
it was in Chinatown also. I think Complex bought them.
Smorgasburg.
Okay, so yeah, and on top of that, I saw Smorgasburg. the
food festival. Yeah.
That was also held in Chinatown as well. And it reminded me of what you just said. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, Chinatown's so cool. But, we don't really respect that place anymore as Chinese people, in the sense of we don't go there go to the restaurants there anymore. And, everything has gone out to the San Gabriel Valley, and, we've kind of lost this treasure that we have in the heart of downtown LA.
Kind of and the tragic thing to me is we haven't even lost it. We just gave it up.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. No one took it from us.
Yeah. We went elsewhere.
Yeah.
And there's great communities there. There's a Chinatown Youth Center. But the larger community, we're spending dollars elsewhere.
Yeah.
And businesses, landlords, they're gonna go to the communities that are spending money there.
Yeah. So I really want to do a push to bring back Chinese people, well, not just Chinese people, Asian people.
Yeah.
Come back to Chinatown. Look, K-Town's flourishing.
Go to Steep LA, go to Wongkok, go to Hopwoo, go.
Yeah.
There's some great places there, y'all.
Yeah, let's go. All right, and lastly, before we sign off, I'm very encouraged by our clips getting a lot of comments and engagement.
Yeah.
From every side.
Many different sides are represented in our comments.
I love it, and I encourage it. I embrace it. And I really want to know more about what our audience wants us to talk about.
Yeah.
I think I'd love to do a segment in the future where we have one part where it's something from our listeners and watchers, viewers who want to, want us to touch upon any certain subject. So I just want to throw that out to all of you. If there's any topic, it doesn't necessarily have to be Asian. It could be anything that you want to get our opinion about. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
So,
I'll say we have our own points of view.
Yeah.
We just want to start conversations. We want people to be engaging. If you're being a dickhead, please don't. Please don't just be mean and threatening to people who disagree with you in our comments. But I'm going to say that, you know what? Honestly, what we want to do is we want to start conversations, and we want to have people share genuinely. And I was really encouraged, when we talked about racial fetishization, when we talked about there's these Asian girls, and we've heard this, that say, I don't want to date Asian guys. Yeah. People came in that with a lot of strong feelings.
Yeah.
I saw things from Asian women who were look, and I was really encouraged by Asian women who came into our comments who understood what we're saying. They were look, we understand that for our brothers, our friends, our cousins, our community members, it's tough on y'all. Here's some of my experiences. That's totally cool. Please keep sharing that.
Yeah.
There's going to be people in our comments who disagree with each other.
Yeah.
We're not block and restrict type dudes. We're not gonna be yo, you disagree with us, or you said this thing out of pocket,
right?
Unless you're being super flagrant.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is see people. We want to have part of why we started this pod was because we don't agree on everything, but we wanted to have conversations about how people actually feel.
Yeah.
So please keep commenting, keep talking on things, follow us on our Instagram and everything, because fundamentally, we think that there need to be more open conversations. And whether that's people calling us anti-Black and dummies for not knowing, or honestly, it's not that we don't know, it's that we don't mention certain things within 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Or whether that's people saying we're incels mad that we can't, date women, which is very funny if you know us. Whatever it is, though, we're happy to see people engage genuinely.
That's right. All right. See you in the comments. I'm Jeff Kung. This is
Jason Chu.
All right. And we out.
Peace.